Hi, I'm Lisa from Lori's Country Cottage and welcome to How To'sDay. Today, I'm going to talk about how to wash and care for your quilt. How to wash and care for your quilt begins even before you cut your fabric. When you bring your fabric home, you need to test it for color fastness. Reds, purples, and blues are most likely to lose their color or bleed color. So it's a good idea to test your fabric before you even cut it. You can do that in a couple of ways. If it's a smaller piece of fabric, you can put it in a bowl of cool water and just see if any color comes out. Larger pieces, you could use your sink and do the same thing. Or you can take a white piece of cloth and wet it and gently rub your fabric and see if any of the color comes out. If it does, you need to wash your fabric, but not just the one that is losing color. You need to wash all of the fabric that is going into that project, but not all together. Wash that fabric that is bleeding color by itself to get the extra dye out. And then you need to wash all the other fabrics with light colored fabric so that they're all washed when you start your project. Your other option is to use a product called Retain. Retain will stop the bleed and set the color for your fabric. All right, now your fabric is all ready to go. Okay, now your quilt is made. How do you take care of it? Well, quilts are best stored flat, laying on a bed, but not many of us have a room that we could just lay all our quilts on a bed. So we fold them, and folding is okay. I fold mine in thirds instead of quarters to prevent that dreaded quilter's cross down the center of my quilts. It's also a good idea to refold your quilts every 3 months. Again, it prevents creasing. 100% cotton batting is more likely to hold a crease than 80-20. That might help you decide what kind of batting to get next time you're making a project. And if your quilt isn't being used, give it a good shake. Toss it in the dryer with a wet towel to freshen it up and just get rid of any dust or lint that's hanging on your quilt. Okay, now you've got a quilt that you've been using and it's time to wash it. You can hand wash quilts, you certainly can, but quilts are heavy and bulky and it's kind of hard to wash them in a bathtub, but it can be done. If you do that, use soak detergent on your quilt. It is the safest to use. I machine wash my quilts. I put them in the machine on a gentle cycle and always with 2 dye catchers. And I use mild soap. Also, here's a hint. When I give a quilt as a gift, I always give them the wash and care instructions and 4 color catchers to use the first time they wash it. Now, soak is a mild detergent. It's a low suds, no rinse soap. That's what I said, no rinse. The dirt comes out with the water and whatever soak is left in your project evaporates. Soap comes in unscented and scented. If you rinse your project, the scent will disappear from the soak. Soap can be used in high efficiency washers, and it's best to use about a 15-minute cycle with cold water. Oh no, you've washed your quilt and there's a color bleed. Now what do? The first thing you don't do is put it in the dryer or let it dry. If you put it in the dryer, the heat will set that dye in the wrong spot and it's really hard to get it out. So you could put it back in the washer with some color catchers or hand wash it with Synthrapol. Synthropol removes excess dye from fabric and it suspends those color particles in the water so they don't settle back on your quilt. You can use Synthropol on your fabric before you cut it as well. Okay, most of the color is out, but there's still just a little bit there. You can go ahead and try Dawn dish soap or Grandma's Secret Spot Remover. But remember, when you're trying to remove excess dye from a quilt that's bled, those products need to sit on that fabric for a little bit of time. It's better to let it sit than to rub it in. And what about vinegar? In my research, I saw very many websites that suggested using vinegar to set your color. And yet, a textile designer and artist suggested that vinegar only works on acid-dyed fabrics, which means not our quilting cottons. I'm not sure on that one. All right, the quilt is clean. All the color is out. Now, how do I dry it? Well, quilts can be laid flat to dry. So you would lay towels on your bed or wherever you're drying it, lay your quilt on top, and keep rotating your quilt until it's dry. It's a lengthy process. You can lay it outside to help speed the drying, but not in the sun. It will fade your fabric. I put mine in the dryer. I put it on a gentle cycle, low heat. I add some dryer balls and a dry towel to help it dry. But I take it out before it's completely dry. It's just got a little bit of moisture left. And then I lay it on my kitchen table or hang it over my kitchen chairs just to finish that drying process. Don't hang your quilt to dry. All of the weight of the water in the quilt will pull on your seams and it can distort your quilt. Now, these are instructions for everyday pieced quilts. Please do not wash your heirloom or antique quilts in your washing machine. If you want to wash them yourselves, please hand wash them in your bathtub with great care, or take it to a professional to have them cleaned. Most wall quilts don't need to be washed in a washing machine or washed at all. Sometimes they just need a good dusting or take it outside and give it a good shake to get the dust off the surface. Be careful with quilts with applique, embroidery, and handcrafted details. If they're stitched down with satin stitch, it's okay to put them in the washing machine, but sometimes I don't do that unless I really have to. And just a note, make sure you wash your quilt alone. Never wash it with anything with zippers, with clothing, or Velcro. Well, I hope you learned a little about how to wash and care for your quilt before and after it's made. Thank you for joining me for How Tuesday. I hope you learned a little bit about how to wash and care for your quilt so that you can enjoy it and so can generations to come. Thanks for joining me.